Welcome to Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. For the next 2 hours, going to get you caught up on everything you need to know. We've got a massive weekend of NFL action. There's a lot to preview over the course of the show. But, Caroline, we've got huge matchups coming. It starts tonight with Thursday Night Football. We spent a lot of time checking that out yesterday. I would tell everybody, go out in the YouTube channel, find some of our preview of yesterday's game. But that is just the beginning of a wild slate of action, particularly in the NFC, where there are two massive matchups that all eyes are on. Packers, Bears, one of the greatest rivalries in all of sports. And now we get this with all the implication, everything on the line. Who has more to prove in this one? Is it Green Bay, whose defense we've suddenly decided we're out on without Micah Parsons? Or is it the Bears, who everybody's still trying to decide on if they're in on? So much to prove in this one.
There is so much to prove on this one, but I do lean Green Bay. I do feel like the stakes are higher for Green Bay. I do feel like Green Bay has more to prove, and for a few reasons. Number one, it's prove that you can do it without Micah Parsons. And look, I understand that we viewed Green Bay as a Super Bowl contender pre-Micah trade, but the Micah trade just kind of emphasized everything. The Micah trade just proved to me and to everyone else out there, okay, no, they do believe that they're in a Super Bowl window, and they are going to capitalize on the window that they're in. No Micah Parsons makes this Green Bay Packers defense obviously significantly weaker. You don't really trust a whole lot what they have going on in the back end in their defense. How are they going to get pressure outside of Micah Parsons? Who's going to step up and at least try to eclipse what you've lost in losing Micah Parsons? That's one question that I have. I think the Packers need to prove that to all of us. I think it's also a big prove-it moment for themselves. Caleb Williams, a guy who can do a lot off platform, a guy who can do a lot just, running out of the pocket, extending plays. How are they going to be able to contain Caleb Williams? If they're able to do that, that's a big confidence booster inside of the locker room. The second reason is because I view Green Bay as a legitimate Super Bowl contender. I view Green Bay as a team that can legitimately find themselves playing in San Francisco. I don't see the Bears there yet. I mean, we even had Brandon Marshall on yesterday on the show, and I asked him, are they a Super Bowl contender? And he was like, no, not there yet. He was a Chicago Bear, and he's the one telling you, look, I've worn that uniform. I've been there before. I've played in the postseason before, and they're just not quite there yet. So I think for the Packers, with the stakes and the expectations, and now how they're going to have to pivot their plan defensively without Micah Parsons, they have much more to prove.
Well, and it gets interesting because just look at what winning looks like at the highest level. We've talked a lot about the fact that a pass rusher in and of himself doesn't necessarily create immediate results for wins. Like, we see a lot of great pass rushers on bad football teams. But if you want to look at how to win the Super Bowl, you got to be able to get after the passer. Like, there's the very clear way that you've beaten the last couple of years the Kansas City Chiefs when you want to get after him is just getting after Mahomes. And you start thinking about what you see right now when we're trying to figure out some of these quarterbacks in the AFC. We're trying to figure out some of the quarterbacks in the NFC. We're trying to figure out some of these matchups. The best way to put yourself in the right situation is to be able to absolutely get after that quarterback. Without Mike on the field, I share your sort of, I want to see what it looks like, because I think their Super Bowl likelihood takes a huge dip if they can't generate pressure from somebody. But in this game, part of the reason I think the Bears have more to prove is the very thing you just mentioned. We're still waiting to buy in on Chicago. And it's funny to me because you're talking about that man right there, the first overall pick in the draft last year. And for whatever reason, people are still trying to put the but after Caleb Williams' name constantly. Yeah, but he holds on to the ball too long. Yeah, but he tries to make too many big plays off schedule. Yeah, but he's not taking what's there in front of him that's easy. And those are all part of his resume to this point. Sure. But Ben Johnson came in trying to fix that. And I don't think it's unreasonable to look at the biggest hire of the offseason in Ben Johnson and say, it was going to take a minute. Like, Caleb and Ben need a minute to figure each other out. We've seen so much growth from the Bears. They've spent so much money to become a better roster over the last 2 years. They get Caleb playing the best that Caleb can play. And they have what looks clearly to be the best of the young crop of coaches hired last year. Ben Johnson's everything we thought Ben was going to be. So, yes, we could take the angle all day long that the Bears have just gotten lucky. Last year, it was just part of the identity of the Chiefs. They weren't lucky. That was just who they are. Maybe this Bears team just is successful in the margins. That's who they are this year. But if they go in and beat the Packers, if we're talking about a Chicago team that has beaten the Packers and beaten the Eagles the way they beat the Eagles, Why not the Bears for the Super Bowl? Like I hear it. It doesn't look like it. The eye test tells us it's not there. But they just beat the snot out of the Philadelphia Eagles. If they turn around and beat the Packers, they will have beaten 2 of the 4 best teams in the conference in this process. So I think there's so much to prove because people haven't bought in on the Bears the right way yet. This game could absolutely change that.
Is it not buying in on the Bears the right way, or is it taking it for what we see at face value? That the Bears are a much improved football team. It looks like the Bears, with how much young talent they have, Kyle Monungai running the football, Roma Dunze, Caleb Williams, so on and so forth. It's how much young talent they have. The Bears aren't going to go anywhere, especially as long as Ben Johnson is at the helm. That we view this Bears team as a contender for the next 5 to 10 years, but we also don't necessarily view them as a Super Bowl contender this year. That it's maybe just everything is too new. It's too fresh. They're too young. There's just not enough consistency from this Bears team. Maybe not enough proof of concept against the perennial contenders for us to truly believe that they're Super Bowl contenders. I mean, I didn't view the Denver Broncos as legitimate Super Bowl contenders until like a couple of weeks ago because I just didn't know how much I could trust Bo Nix. But week over week over week, it was proven to me that, okay, I can trust Bo Nix, that Bo Nix is getting better week over week, that in clutch time, Bo Nix plays his best brand of football. I think at this point, it's okay to say that we've seen enough of a really good sample size of Bears beating up on bad teams, which you do get credit for that, by the way. You do get credit for beating up on the bad teams that are on your schedule, that maybe we can view the Bears ahead of schedule after beating the snot out of the Philadelphia Eagles, and was it a splattering? That I now view the Bears in a different light after that game, that no longer are you just beating up on the bad teams, you're also beating up on the good teams too. You're beating up on the reigning Super Bowl champions, but you're just not quite there yet to be viewed in the light of a legitimate Super Bowl contender because you just haven't been knocking on the door enough.
Yeah, and it's fair because, look, they follow up the win at Philly with the loss in Green Bay, right? They lost that game to the Packers at Lambeau. I think if you can't beat the Packers at home, Soldier Field here right now, then you've got to sort of, I know it's hard for me to say, got to change that conversation a little bit. And Bears fans, I'll just remind you, if you don't like what we're saying, if you're sitting there saying, give my team respect, you'll learn it. The next 3 games, you have the Packers, the 49ers, the Lions. If the Bears belong in the Super Bowl conversation over the next 3 weeks, they'll earn it. That's not the only big game in the NFC this week, though. We have a massive game for the NFC South. Yes, these teams are not on the same level as what we were just talking about. But when you start talking about the NFC South, it all comes down to the end of the season because we have Tampa Bay taking on Carolina. And I'm trying to figure out at this point who should be more panicked on the losing side of this, because you've got sort of this take advantage of the moment Carolina team, but you've got this Tampa Bay team that came in with expectations. Who's more panicked in the loss?
Oh, it's Tampa Bay. 1,000% it's Tampa Bay. I don't even really think it's all that close because I picked Tampa Bay to go to the Super Bowl going into this season. I'll tell on myself. I was wrong. Tampa Bay is not going to the Super Bowl. But I just thought on paper, I thought if this team can stay healthy, this team is going to be absolutely terrifying. What happened? They couldn't stay healthy, whether it was Baker or Mike Evans or Chris Godwin or Emeka Egbuka. The list goes on and on. Tristan Wirfs. The list goes on and on and on. But we were talking about Tampa Bay as one of those teams that was going to get over the hump and take a massive leap this year. We were talking about Carolina going into this season as, is Bryce Young the guy? Actually, no, I take that back, because we weren't even talking about Carolina going into the season. There was nothing that felt noteworthy enough to even talk about the Panthers. So I know that we can't always go back to preseason expectations, but I do think that tells a lot. That this is a Tampa Bay team that if you told me in August that they would be at risk of missing the playoffs altogether, I would say, what are you smoking? And can I get some of it? Because that's absolutely positively crazy. So more is at stake for Tampa Bay in a loss. At this point, I think the Panthers are kind of playing with house money. I live in Charlotte. I'm a mile away from Bank of America Stadium in Uptown Charlotte. The conversation surrounding the Panthers is, look at us. We're pretty good. Like, hey, we could actually win the division and make the playoffs. Like, everybody's just happy to be here. Everybody's just excited to potentially get an invitation to the party. To be 7-7 at 500 and with the season coming down to the last 3 games of the season, like, everyone in Charlotte's really excited about that. Whereas in Tampa Bay, it's panic. So it's 100% the onus is on Tampa Bay for everything throughout the rest of the season.
Well, and that's why, we've spent so much time trying to figure out what to make of this division. We all fell in love with the Buccaneers early, and now we've all fallen out of love with the Buccaneers. But it really comes down to this. Like, we always talk about what team, if they sneak into the playoffs, everybody's just say, I don't want to take them on. That's going to be Tampa if they find a way in, because everybody likes the story of Baker. But you're right. This is a decimated Buccaneers team that also just hasn't looked right over the course of the last month, over the course of the last 6 weeks. Baker hasn't looked right, battling his own injury issues. This is not the same version of Baker that we had early in the season. That's part of why, look, long-term, I don't think that there's massive panic from this. If the Buccaneers miss the playoffs, I don't think the Buccaneers are suddenly out here making wholesale changes to everything. I don't think they're firing their coach. I don't think they're in the quarterback market. I don't think they're suddenly blowing everything up. The organization typically hasn't done that. And also, I'm not sure you do that off of one bad year. So, like, long-term, I think there's both of these teams have to feel pretty good about where they're going to be in the future. The Bucs are going to look around and say, we'll get healthy. This was just a weird year. The Panthers are going to turn around and say, oh, my God, look at the situation we're in. I do think, though, that there is some moment here for Carolina. Like, we talk all the time about windows and why you have to take advantage of the window while you have the window. This is such an unprecedentedly weird year in the NFL. I'm not sure if the Panthers are actually a good football team or not. I just know that they're having a good season. So there is value to getting themselves into the playoffs. It's amazing how different the conversation is about Carolina right now. And you're right. I think part of it is just the national sort of discourse on Carolina is, oh, that's cute. Right. But if you're these Panthers teams, like if you're Bryce Young, this is a quarterback that a year ago was coming off being benched. And we were trying to figure out if he even still had a future in this league. And now he could lead a team to the playoffs. So absolutely incredible. And I don't think we've gotten so consumed with what Tampa Bay is doing wrong. I do, Caroline, want to take a moment and just acknowledge that the Panthers are so far ahead of where any of us expected they would be. The tone of the conversation on Carolina is wildly different today than it was a year ago, 6 months ago, 4 months ago. That's a credit to what they built and the way they're building it.
Well, I mean, the conversation 6 months ago was, how do you tear it down and start over? And now the conversation is, wait, we can work with this. And I think a big part of that is because the conversation surrounding Bryce Young is starting to change. I don't think Bryce Young is capable of being an elite quarterback. That's just not who he is in this league. I don't think he's the kind of quarterback like a Josh Allen that can elevate everyone else around him on any given Sunday. But what I think Bryce Young can do, and what he has proven, is that he can elevate at times, is that he is not going to lose you games consistently. And I think there's a lot more of those kind of quarterbacks in the NFL than maybe we would like to lead on. That if you have a quarterback that just doesn't lose you games, if you have a quarterback that can make pop off the page kind of plays, on any given down, on any given Sunday, when he has that ability in him, well, if you just put pieces around him, receivers that can stretch the field, which they did with Tedero and McMillan in this past draft, when you have a run game that can supplement the pass game and can take a little bit of pressure off the quarterback like they have done with Rico Dowdle, if you can bolster up a defense and not have to ask your quarterback to be Superman when he doesn't have the capability of being Superman, like, those are keys to success. You can win games and win playoff games in the National Football League with that kind of formula. So I think we need to start changing our perspective on Bryce Young. Maybe he is much more the future in Carolina than we would have thought just a year ago.
Yeah, next year becomes wild already for Bryce, because let's remember this is the end of year 3. So next year they'll have to figure out what they're doing with Bryce moving forward already. We've already gotten to that point. Who you got in the game? You taking Carolina or Tampa Bay?
I'm taking Tampa Bay, because I do think if it comes down to Bryce Young needs to make a play or Baker Mayfield needs to make a play, I mean, come on. Like, I'm taking Baker Mayfield to be able to make a play whenever he needs to make it happen. I do think there's so much frustration from their last game that will bubble over, hopefully, ideally for them, in a positive way, using that as fuel rather than just to, take this whole thing off the rails. I will take Tampa Bay, but I shall rejoice with my fellow charlatans, whatever the word is, if Carolina wins and wins the division. Charlotteites.
Charlotte. Yeah.
The people that live
I'm
in
taking the
Charlotte.
Panthers. I am the person that's representing the city. I'm taking the Panthers in this game, mostly because of Rico Dowdle. So let's see if they can run the football against the Buccaneers, who are just a shell of themselves. All right. We've got much more to break down for you from the NFL slate. But coming up next, that man right there said college football is breaking. He gave you the wrong message the wrong way, and we will tell you why.
And I understand the national sentiment because of the salary ranges of head coaches that it feels like we're complaining, but we're really not. We're trying to sound warning bells, and that's what I believe we're all trying to do, is that there's a warning that the system that we're in is really sick right now, and college football is sick, and not in a. It's just there's showing signs of this thing really cracking moving forward. And we need to get something under control.
That's Missouri head coach Eli Drinkwitz talking about some of the problems in college football. He also talks about tampering, saying, quote, tampering is at the highest levels. There's no such thing as tampering because there's no one that's been punished for tampering. Everyone on my roster is being called. He also talked about financial education towards athletes and all of the problems that they have in college football. Caroline, I can get on my soapbox. I'll tell you about this. But first, I shall defer to you, my friend. Your thoughts on Coach Drinkwitz's statements?
You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't be a pot and call the kettle black. Whatever kind of little saying you want to use there, because I guarantee you Eli Drinkwitz is doing the exact same thing that he is accusing other coaches of doing and complaining about other coaches doing. And I guarantee you he's doing that because if you're not doing that, you're not winning. You are so exponentially behind the rest of the pack if you are not keeping up with the Joneses and doing everything else that other coaches are doing in college football. So I don't want to hear Eli Drinkwitz get up at the podium and clutch his pearls about all of the issues that are happening in college football, when in reality, it just kind of sounds like Eli Drinkwitz liked a time when it was easier for him to do his job. Now it's significantly more difficult to build a roster, retain a roster, recruit. You have NIL involved. You have to re-recruit your exact same roster every single year now with the transfer portal. Look, I don't envy college football coaches because their jobs have never been more difficult than they are right now. But are you upset with the system because it doesn't help student athletes, or are you upset with the system because it makes your job harder, because it makes your seat hotter? I hear a lot of college football coaches saying, well, the players can't make money because they're not financially literate, because they don't know how to pay their taxes. They don't know how to save and invest. We're not setting them up for success in the future. Well, then why don't you teach them those things? If you're going to say that you're glad that student athletes are making money, which I have said and always have been consistent in saying, NIL is a positive thing because it is just fundamentally un-American for college football players that create millions of dollars of value and wealth for other people. Don't see part of that. Eli Drinkwitz made that exact same claim in that press conference. He said, I think it's good that players are getting paid. And then says, but, and goes on to list 6 or 7 different reasons why he doesn't think it's a good thing that players are getting paid. It's just, it is not an issue with the system. To me, it just feels very hypocritical for Eli Drinkwitz to be clutching his pearls and pointing his finger at everybody else when he's doing the exact same thing.
You were kinder than I will be because I think the way that Eli Drinkwitz handled this moment and his microphone was disgusting, dangerous, and at best disingenuous. Like, let's just rip this thing apart, shred to shred, piece by piece. You talk about tampering without ever acknowledging that every single college football coach is also getting calls about other jobs. So you talk about tampering with players without acknowledging that there's tampering with coaches. You talk about tampering in a way that it impacts your roster without ever acknowledging what happens to that roster when you get tampered with and decide to take another job. So I can already eliminate the tampering part of this because it's not genuine. You're not trying to fix the coaching element of it. Let's just stop there. The second thing you talk about is financial literacy, and this drives me crazy all the way to my core. Your answer is, well, nobody's helping these kids. You even said in your press conference, like, they're 1099 employees. They don't get insurance. They don't get retirement. Okay. Where does this line end, Eli Drinkwitz? Because, frankly, I don't think anybody's ever worried for a single second about whether the guys in NSYNC got health coverage. I don't think anybody's ever sat there and said, man, are we setting up young musicians to get the best health care that they need? I don't think anybody's ever watched a TikTok video and thought, man, that influencer is making millions of dollars, but what about their retirement? Frankly, I don't think anyone's ever sat there and thought, oh, OnlyFans models are making tons of money. How are they paying their taxes? The fact is, you are an educator in a college. You run a program. If you really wanted financial literacy, you could demand that it be taught at Missouri. If you really wanted these kids to have the opportunity to figure out their taxes, you could demand that it be helped. You could provide those services from day one. Because let me tell you, I grew up poor. I grew up with nothing. And when I started making money in music, not a single person ever sat back and said, wait. You know what we got to do? We got to throttle back his ability to make money right now because God knows how is he going to pay his taxes? You figure it out. When you tour in music, you literally have to file tax forms with every single state in the country. You have to file tax forms with every country in the world that you make more than a certain amount of money in. And nobody has ever sat there and said, you know what? Hold on, guys. We can't let Sabrina Carpenter go out there and make that money. How is she going to pay your taxes? It's so disingenuous. If you really care about it, put the systems in place. If you want to fix this, you can fix this at Missouri, and you can even use it as a calling card. You can go to kids and say, hey, we will equip you with this information. Otherwise, all you are trying to do is use your microphone to control your labor costs. Shame on you for doing it that way. You want to fix it yourself. Don't ask everybody else to come in and throttle back players from having their opportunity to earn that they have worked their whole lives for because you're afraid they can't handle the moment unless you're doing that from every other kid anywhere in America, no matter what they do, and you're not doing that. So it's all just a big lie to control your labor costs. It's disgusting. I think Caroline has something to say, but I can't hear. Caroline is muted right now. So we'll see what Caroline's thoughts are as I've just eviscerated Coach Drinkwitz. Go ahead, Caroline.
I do not know why that happened, but very, very well said by you, and it is disgusting. To assume that kids, because that's who they are, that's what they are, they're children, they're kids, to assume these kids won't know what to do with their money and that's justification to not pay them is gross. Like you said, like, if you are the University of Missouri, the football program in the SEC, and you don't have those courses or resources in place to help your student, like, what are you doing? This was something that I saw so many college football programs across America already have directly in place and firmly in place the day that NIL became legal. So you're either telling on yourself that you're not doing that as a football program, as a university, which is such an oversight and a bad move by Missouri, or you're just trying to pick at straws and claim, well, since they don't know what to do with their money, then they shouldn't get paid. No, that's not fair. And that's gross, and that's not right. And if I am a player in the transfer portal, or if I am a recruit in the state of Missouri, or a recruit getting recruited by Missouri, I'm listening to what Eli Drinkwitz is saying and saying, well, he says he wants me to get paid, but everything else that he's saying just claims that he doesn't want me to get paid. I don't want to go there to a place and play for a coach who doesn't think that this system is set up for me. And, Eli Drinkwitz said, college football is sick. College football is sick. Is it? Because college football viewership is at an all-time high. College football investment, financially and with resources, is at an all-time high. College football is a bigger sport than Major League Baseball. College football is a bigger sport than the NBA, than the NHL. College football is a professional league in and of itself, cosplaying as an amateur sport. I could make the argument that the sport has never been in a better place than it is right now. Now, are there parameters that need to be in place to make this model of college football more sustainable? I can totally have a conversation about that. Do we need to have standardization of NIL laws so it's a federal law and not state laws? I can totally get on board with that. Do we need to have more parameters in place and, changing the calendar a bit to make sure that coaches can't leave if the players can't leave in December? Sure. 1000%, I can get on board with that. There are changes that need to be made. The sport is not perfect, but to say that it's sick and to say that it's in a very critical time because players are, getting calls from coaches across America in the month of December about their efforts maybe next year, that's not the reason why the sport is quote unquote sick. The sport's not sick. It just needs to be adjusted. We just need to change our mindset about what college football is. No longer is this an amateur sport? And that's okay. The toothpaste isn't going back in the tube. And the more and more that you try and campaign for putting the toothpaste back into the tube, it just kind of makes you sound, for lack of a better term, a disingenuous ding-dong.
There's this moment for me where just thinking about the concept that college football is broken. The number one team in the country is Indiana. Let that soak in. Indiana. The number one team in the country. We just finished a season where Vanderbilt had a very real shot at the college football playoff. We're about to have playoff games this weekend that have James Madison playing. We have Tulane playing, and we can question whether or not these teams belong all day long. That's fine. But we're also going to get actual meaningful football playoff games between huge brands like Oklahoma, Alabama, right? Like right now, the sport to me is the farthest from broken. It's better than it's ever been. There's an empowerment element of what's happening right now. And in the process of empowerment, coaches are losing some of the power that they have over everybody. And I get that feels difficult, and I get that doesn't feel sustainable. I also do fully support the concept of a unionization of every single college football player. Fine. You want to bring in a salary cap? You want to make everything collectively bargained? Fine. That process is going to take several years to negotiate, and a lot of schools are going to have to play nice in the sandbox together. But every single time a rich coach, like at the core, we forget this sometimes. A college football coach is most of the time the highest paid educator in their state. When you are the highest paid educator in your state, when that is who you are, when you are supposedly a teacher, if you want to go out and you want to help these kids, help them. If you want to make sure that they get the right influences around them, put processes in place where you can try and help some of the kids in your very school that want to be agents and lawyers. You can help them make connections early at college. You can help everybody start to work together. You can help try and figure out guidelines so that the kids that come to your school are insulated from the bad and hopefully have a better shot at the good. You can try and help everybody. When you stand up at a microphone and you tell people that the system is broken, the only person you're really trying to help is yourself. And that's why all of it feels absolutely fraudulent from Eli Drinkwitz or from whoever else stands up in the microphone, the next old man screaming off the lawn about how college football is broken. Plenty to break down. We'll get back to some college football, obviously. But coming up next, Tua benched. What's next for Tagovailoa? We'll figure it out. A major move in Miami, the Dolphins benching Tua Tagovailoa, turning to Quinn Ewers as their new starting quarterback. Ewers' first start comes Sunday versus the Bengals. We talked a little bit about this yesterday. Now we see Adam Schefter laying out the numbers of his contract situation. It's wild when you see this in writing, but he's already guaranteed $54 million. It will increase by another $3 million on March 15th. Cutting him would create a record $99 million in cap space, or potentially $67 million in 2026 if he's deemed a post-June 1st release. We've talked a lot about this, Caroline, yesterday. Those numbers are so staggering. I got to be honest, I'm not sure we can say we've seen the last of Tua in Miami. Like, it feels like we should have seen the last of Tua in Miami, but it will actually cost them more money on the cap next year to not have Tua Tagovailoa be on their roster than it will to keep him on their roster. So I don't know if there's truly an incentive for the Dolphins to push him out the door.
I mean, we're talking about $54 million for him to stay, more like $57 million for him to stay versus $64 million for him to go away. Like, we're talking about a whole buttload of money either way. My question is, though, what's the Dolphins' plan at the quarterback position next year? Because I know they're running it back with Quinn Ewers in the final games of this season. Is Quinn Ewers their plan next year? Maybe they don't know that. Maybe they don't know what their quarterback plan is. But if their plan is to give it a whirl with one of these young guys, whether it's Zach Wilson or Quinn Ewers, I don't think that's a very healthy dynamic for young quarterbacks to feel okay to make mistakes, and for young quarterbacks to develop whenever your former starter who's making $60 million is sitting on the bench and breathing down your neck. Whenever it would be really convenient, whenever Quinn Ewers or Zach Wilson or whoever the heck is their quarterback next season throws a pick or has a bad game, it's so easy for the fan base or for the coaching staff to say, well, what about Tua? Should we give Tua a whirl? If Quinn Ewers is in a shootout in the fourth quarter and you need a guy to march you down the field and get you 6 to win a football game, it would be really convenient to just go to the guy who's done it before, the veteran in the room in Tua. So yes, it would be, $7 million cheaper to keep him on the roster, but I don't think that having a vet in the room who doesn't believe he's done. Tua's 27 years old. He's young. He could have a lot of football ahead of him. I think it's an unhealthy dynamic to have a young quarterback with a young veteran quarterback who doesn't believe his days of playing football are over, sitting on the bench and breathing down his shoulder.
Yeah, this is a difficult situation, too, because there's not a clear path to a quarterback for the Dolphins. So they're going to have to figure out somebody. I can't imagine that Quinn Ewers goes in next year as their unquestioned starter. I mean, let's just remind everybody for a second that Quinn Ewers, while it's a name a lot of us know, was a 7th-round draft pick. How many times this year have we said the phrase regarding Shedeur Sanders of, what do you expect, guys? He's a 5th-round draft pick playing quarterback as a rookie. He's going to struggle. Let's just remind everybody that's 2 rounds earlier than Quinn Ewers was taken. So I get it. Let's just see where it goes. Now, if they do cut him, then the question becomes, what's next for Tua? Because you're right. I mean, Tua is young. He wants to keep playing. Let's look at some landing spots. I'll give you a team. You tell me if you think it's a good landing spot. What about the Colts, knowing that Daniel Jones is hurt? He's going to miss next year, in all likelihood. What do you think about the Colts for a landing spot for Tua?
I don't know. Like, maybe. And the question is, what do the Colts want to do with Daniel Jones? Because even with the injury, are they going to say, okay, we'll still lock him up for a 3-year deal? But are you going to lock him up for a 3-year deal? He's probably going to get like Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield money, like a real quarterback deal. If he doesn't get it in Indianapolis, he'll get it somewhere whenever he gets healthy. So are they going to want to sign up for that, understanding that 30% of their investment is just going to be flushed down the toilet when Daniel Jones is recovering from the Achilles? So I don't know what their plan is. If they do decide to lock Daniel Jones up, knowing that they're not going to have him in 2026, a 1-year deal with Tua would make sense. But I don't know. I don't hate it.
I'm in. I love this. I'm loving this. Like, for the exact, I do think the Colts are going to turn around and do a 3-year contract with Daniel Jones under market value, because that first year is free, basically. He's just going to make money to do nothing. So I think they sign him to a 3-year deal that feels a little bit more reasonable than we expect cost-wise, until we start to figure out, oh, yeah, he's only actually playing 2 of those years. And then they take some of that little extra money that they got sitting around. they put Tua on the same sort of contract. They sell Tua on, hey, just like we saw Daniel Jones with this big reclamation, you can do the same thing here. We'll borrow you for a year, and then we'll switch over to Daniel Jones. I kind of love this with that injury mindset in mind. Let me give you another spot. Let me see. Go ahead.
Well, quick note on that, though. We've seen Daniel Jones have a renaissance in his career under Shane Steichen. What if Tua has the same? What if Tua just absolutely positively blossoms into everything that we thought he would be when every team in the NFL was #tanking for Tua? Like, what if Tua has the same renaissance in Indianapolis as Daniel Jones had in Indianapolis? How are you going to sell the fans on that? We just signed Daniel Jones to a 3-year deal and Tua got us to the playoffs?
I'm in for
You're
the
gonna
drama.
let him walk?
I want the drama. That's great content for us. We'll spend all next year saying, "Oh my God, who's actually going to be the quarterback of the Colts?" I love this. You're only selling me on it more. This didn't. My Tua. That's why. Okay. How about this one? How about an unquestioned starter that will come back but won't likely be himself if he is available week 1? Would be Mahomes and the Chiefs. What about Tua to the Chiefs on a rental under? Okay, no, she's out.
No, I hate that. That's disgusting. Just for a second, Fitz, I want you to close your eyes and imagine Tua in a Chiefs uniform. Weird,
as a
right?
Raiders fan, I kind of love that. I kind of love it.
It's weird. It's weird to envision him in that uniform. Honestly, if I'm Kansas City, I'm going to take the glass half full approach. I like to think of myself as a bit of an optimist. This is your opportunity this year and next year is your opportunity to embrace the suck, to get a top 10 pick, to find your speedster stretch the field receiver, to find your go-to bell cow running back, to find your next pass rusher, whatever it is. Because let's not ignore the elephant in the room here. The issues with the Chiefs go much, much, much deeper than Mahomes tearing his ACL. The Chiefs have a lot of roster holes that they're going to have to fill that was so easy and convenient for them to just overlook because we've got Mahomes and we can just run it back with Mahomes. If I'm Kansas City, I'm like, you know what? Give me a Joe Schmo off the street. We'll go 2-15 with the optimism that Patrick Mahomes is going to come back and be Patrick Mahomes, and you're able to find some really solid skill position players to fill in, and then you're just going to reload your roster and go right back into your dynastic run. But maybe signing Tua is embracing the suck. To be fair,
I hate that because it leads the Chiefs back to a dynasty. So I'm in. I need Tua to go there. Reclamation project. Tua plays 1 year under Andy Reid. Everybody's like, "Oh my God, Tua's back!" And then he goes somewhere else. How about? Got to get to the teams that suck. What about my beloved Raiders? Okay, I'll just tell you straight out. My first thought on this is that, boy, do I hate this. Like, the last thing I want is a sort of bridge gap quarterback again. I mean, if you're going to go with Tua, you might as well just stick with Geno, as bad as Geno has been. But also, from some point, you got to rip the Band-Aid off and completely rebuild. So if the Raiders end up with the first or second pick in the draft, which I think they will, I would imagine that they take a quarterback if that is the opportunity. I hate the thought of Tua being another Band-Aid at the position, though.
Yeah. I don't even know if I'd call him a Band-Aid. That's being pretty nice to Tua. Tua with the Raiders would be poop on top of poop. Like, you're bad, and you're fixing being bad with more bad. It's like when people are on diets and they're like, "Oh, I know I had a cupcake. I ruined my diet. Let me have 16 more." That's what that would be. I hate that.
Let me give you one more crazy one. What about the Rams? What about the Rams just taking a little bit of a shot? Just a flyer on bringing him in as a backup like Jimmy G, put him in the building, see how he does, teach him the offense. Okay, she doesn't like that one.
I'm so sorry to poo-poo all of these options and all of these proposals. No, you can't go from Matthew Stafford in an MVP season and the Rams looking like the most complete team in the NFL and say, all right, Sean McVay, offensive genius, Puka Nacua, one of the best receivers in the NFL, the Rams, one of the best teams in the NFL. You know how we're going to continue this momentum? Tua. Nope. Hard sell for me. No way. Nope. Absolutely not. And if you want to bring Tua in as a reliable backup, because that's probably what Tua is at this point in his career, fine. But I think there's going to be too many quarterback needy teams that are looking for Tua as a starter. And I'm Tua. I'm going to where I can start, not where I'm going to be a backup.
Yeah, there is going to be a desperate team that tries to pick up Tua. If Tua gets cut, he will start somewhere in the NFL next year. Just get ready for that. Tua Tagovailoa being the savior. They're going to try and turn him into the next Baker Mayfield or the next Daniel Jones or the next Sam Darnold. They're going to try and figure it out.
Where do you think he's going to be next year?
Miami. I think he's in Miami. Where do you think? I think Miami pitches us on. We're going to bring in some competition, but we still love Tua. It was just the end of the year. Like, I think Quinn's going to go out and suck. And then the Dolphins aren't going to have a clear path to a quarterback, and then they're not going to take a hit to not have Tua on the sideline. What about you?
The Jets.
do not put that in my mentions. Put that in her Jets fans. Do not put that in my mentions. Put that straight
what
to
do we
her.
think?
I'm not even I am afraid of what
Justin
Jets fans are going to do to you
Tua.
on Twitter for the rest. Okay, that's Jets fans. I'm sorry, Jets fans. I'm sorry. We're going to take 2 minutes and think about what we've done.
What do we think?
To Jets. If the Jets get stuck with Tua, I have no idea. I have no idea how they reclaim anything. I just feel bad for him. Okay, right. It's terrible. NBA expansion, is that terrible? You might be surprised by our answer. We'll tell you next. Welcome back to Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. We need to get into some NBA expansion, but first, let's get to some 3 points. 3 things you need to know, and I'll start with the first point on my mind. NBA action last night. There is utter, pure panic in Cleveland at this point. You see the score there. The Bulls take down the Cavs 127-111. Cleveland has now lost 7 of their last 10 games. That's not good. What's even worse is how much money they're spending to do it, and that's why this gets wildly complicated. Cleveland has the league's highest payroll at this point. That's right. They're into the apron to a point that the tax consequence is absolutely stunning. And for that, what do they have? Nothing. They have mediocrity everywhere. I would ask you, what's the thing that the Cleveland Cavaliers do incredibly well this year? What is the thing that they can hang their hat on and say, this gets us through, this is how we can compete? The answer is nothing. They're okay offensively. They're okay defensively. They don't do anything particularly well. They've lost their 13th game of the season. They didn't lose their 13th game until mid-March of last season. And that's what makes this particularly tricky. When you're coming off of a good season, and you have high expectations, and you have spent the money, certainly everybody wants to get very impatient with the results, and rightfully so. The results are not good enough this year. But what do you do to fix that? Is making a trade, is Darius Garland being traded somewhere going to really fix the rest of the Cleveland Cavaliers season? I don't know, but something is wrong. Typically in these situations, you fire a coach. But why do you fire a coach coming off of the year that they just had? It can't just be that. Something is broken. And unfortunately, we don't have enough access behind the scenes to see what is broken, but you can see it in the way that they play. You can see it in the lack of aggressiveness. You can see it in the lack of movement. You can see it in the body language. You can see it in everything they do. Something is broken in Cleveland. And the problem is there isn't an easy solution or fix to what they need. Sure, going out of the trade deadline might make everybody feel a little bit better. But in a wide open East, this was supposed to be a year that the Cleveland Cavaliers could compete for a championship. And instead, we're just trying to figure out how the hell they even make the playoffs. For all of the disappointments we've had throughout the course of the landscape in sports this year, the Cavs might be one of the biggest disappointments we've seen, not just in the NBA this season, but in all of sports. And I'm not sure there's an easy way to right the ship for Cleveland. Keep an eye on the trade deadline. Let's see what they do. But right now, everything is broken in Cleveland. Caroline Fenton, what is on your mind, my friend?
Yeah, I'm looking at the Grizzlies with a big win over the Minnesota Timberwolves last night, 116-110. Now, granted, let's keep in mind, Minnesota did not have Anthony Edwards last night. But still, Memphis went into Minnesota in their home arena as 7.5-point dogs. And that was the spread even after Anthony Edwards was announced that he was going to be out for that game. Memphis was still a pretty large underdog, and they still went in and beat them up with injuries of their own. Let's not act like the Grizzlies were at full strength in that game either. So now at this point, the Grizzlies are one game below 500. They're comfortably in a play-in spot. And they can absolutely contend for a playoff spot. And now you get this good kind of vibe, this good confidence that not only is Memphis beating the bad teams, because they've been doing that, but now they can beat the good teams, because that's exactly what they did last night. And they have a meeting with the Washington Wizards coming up in just a couple of days. The Grizzlies should be 500, beating up on a pretty bad Washington team. So the vibes are good. And they beat Minnesota last night without Ja Morant. In fact, they've been doing a whole lot of winning without Ja Morant. When the Grizzlies have Ja Morant on the court, they are 5-9. When the Grizzlies do not have Ja Morant available, they're 8-5. And look, I am always incredibly hesitant to say that teams are better without their superstar. There was maybe some commentary about, are the Spurs better without Wemby? That's ridiculous. I would never make that claim. But I think we can make a legitimate claim that the Grizzlies are better off without Ja Morant. And it's not just the win and loss column, although the win and loss column variance with and without Ja is pretty staggering. It's not just about basketball. You can see a healthier team dynamic when Ja is not on the court. No longer does the entire team revolve around one guy. No longer does everyone in that organization have to wait with bated breath for Ja Morant to do something stupid, to say something dumb that gets into the headlines, to do something dumb that gets him suspended, or to say or to do something that paints the Memphis Grizzlies in a bad light. And it is fair to say, the Grizzlies should be very hesitant of moving on from Ja Morant, because in a market like Memphis, they need a superstar. I would argue, well, what you need to do first and foremost is win basketball games. They've been doing more of that without Ja than with Ja. And if you say you need a superstar, Jaren Jackson Jr. may just be the closest thing that they have to a superstar. Last night against the Minnesota Timberwolves, 28 points, 12 boards, 3 blocks, and a steal. He limited Julius Randle to just 9 of 21 from the field. Jaren Jackson Jr. is the leading scorer on that team, and sure, he doesn't dominate headlines the same way that Ja Morant does, but you know what he does do? Help this basketball team win basketball games. And that should be the number one prerogative for the Memphis Grizzlies. Would it be a hard trade to make and a hard sell? For sure, 100%. But I feel pretty good, especially after beating a good team last night. The Memphis Grizzlies are better off without him.
Speaking of Memphis, let's get into some of what Adam Silver told everybody as we had the NBA Cup, because a big part of that conversation was about the possibility of expansion. And look, he did say that they will make decisions sometime in 2026. It's long been presumed for years that Seattle and Vegas would be the two front runners in that expansion conversation. But I guess, Caroline, my question is, do we really want expansion? I'm looking around right now at an NBA
Yeah.
where there are certain teams that just, there aren't enough teams that I think are great, right? There aren't enough competitive teams at the bottom of this thing. Do we really want 2 extra teams in this thing? I'm listening to you talk about Memphis, and I'm thinking about some of the lower franchises in the NBA and thinking, if we really want markets added to this, why not consider relocation before considering watering down the talent pool even more?
Yeah, before we talk about expansion and where the NBA would expand, because I know Seattle is going to be the city that everybody looks to. Vegas is going to be a city everyone looks to. My hometown, St. Louis, would love a basketball franchise in St. Louis. There's plenty of cities that I think would be great NBA cities. But before we talk about expansion, let's ask ourselves the question, is that a good idea? What does that do for the association? Is the NBA a better league and a better product because they have more teams? I don't know. And I frankly don't think so. Adam Silver has even talked about how do you divide, the league revenue up between 32 teams versus 30 teams. We've got some struggling franchises in the NBA. I look at the New Orleans Pelicans, which it hurts me to say, spending 4 years of my life in Louisiana. But look, I worked in a sports department in a local news station for 2 years, an hour away from New Orleans. Want to know how many stories I did about the New Orleans Pelicans? 0. I did more stories on former LSU players or former Louisiana high school players playing in teams hundreds of miles away from the city of New Orleans, more than I did about the basketball team in New Orleans. So if you have struggling franchises like the Washington Wizards, I think is a good one. Memphis, there is so much support in the city of Memphis for the Grizzlies. So I'm a little bit hesitant on that one, but there are plenty of franchises across the NBA that are just failing and uninteresting franchises. If they move to Vegas, if they move to Seattle, automatically that's a significantly more exciting franchise with a city that's excited to buy into that team. So I think relocation should be more the conversation beyond expansion.
And these numbers you see here on this Sports Business Journal tweet are important. That moving forward means selling equity in a league that already is sharing an 11-year, $77 billion national media rights deal across 30 teams. Of course, there are entrance fees for joining the league, but it wouldn't offset what that suddenly looks like when you're splitting that 2 extra pieces of the pie coming out, right? So that's a huge part of it. And also, I think we forget sometimes how difficult expansion is to be competitive. One thing that you have to have. And look, the NHL has figured this out in ways that other leagues haven't. The NHL has been lucky, I think, at times that they put a team in Vegas and that team is immediately successful. If they put a bad team in Las Vegas, where there are so many things to do with your dollar, that team is just going to be forgotten, right? There is an expectation for something that's night in and night out. Sure, Raiders games are filled consistently with visiting teams. That's easy to do because there's only 8 home games, 9 some years, and then everything is about, okay, I'm going to go to Vegas for the weekend and make it this big trip. Well, what are you doing on a Tuesday night game when suddenly it's a random team playing in Vegas? Are there going to be fans from all over the world flocking to that on a Tuesday night in Vegas? I don't think so. So for me, having the opportunity to get an existing franchise to come in also puts you far ahead of the usual expectation of expansion teams, which are terrible from the outset. You can't suck for 5 years and remain relevant in some cities. So the other part of it, too, is that, to your point, the Pelicans, I'm not trying to take anything from anybody. Relocation hurts fans. I understand that.
Yeah.
If you're the Pelicans, you got to look around at some point and say, where can our business thrive the most? This is just business 101. And this is just an unfortunate byproduct of relocation in sports. I have for years done a weekly interview with the Memphis radio. I love Memphis, the city. I love the people of Memphis. I love what the Grizzlies mean to Memphis. I understand all of that. I'm not sure the Memphis Grizzlies wouldn't be a more viable franchise if they were in a different market. I think these things can all exist at the same time. So the hard part of the conversation is that there are certain cities we just want to get the NBA back to. So the easy conversation for Seattle is let's expand. Carolina, I think the tougher conversation, because it breaks people's hearts along the way, but the real conversation is how do we maximize the number of teams we have and find the max markets for them? How can we make sure that we're as successful as possible? Adding 2 more teams is just going to add more tanking, more junk, more terrible basketball that takes years to fix.
Expansion teams are incredibly difficult. It takes several years to really establish yourself in that city. in the league as a whole. What it takes for expansion teams to really kind of stick is championship runs. And that's difficult to do in the early years of your franchise. I mean, we saw Vegas, the Golden Knights do it. We saw the Nashville Predators do it. I mean, the Nashville Predators were at risk of leaving Nashville and going to Montreal or Ottawa, wherever in Canada, until they went on a cup run. And now the Nashville Predators are a focal point in the sports scene in Nashville. So it takes time and it takes championship runs. But what Seattle does have is an already existing basketball fan base. If you walk around Seattle, you'll probably see several Supersonics t-shirts and hats and jerseys. Everyone in Seattle is just waiting in anticipation to get their franchise back. Seattle's also a fantastic sports city. So I think if we do want to talk about expansion, understanding that there are several hoops to jump through for expansion teams, the best place to go would be Seattle. I mean, that franchise, that fan base, rather, the people of Seattle have been lamenting the fact that the Supersonics aren't there since the day that they left. So I think if you're going to sign up for the hurdles and the challenges that do inevitably come with an expansion team, any expansion franchise will tell you that it does come with several hoops to jump through. Seattle is the place that feels the easiest to establish themselves because they're already kind of established.
Well, and as long as they can continue to use Vegas for exhibitions and summer league and fun and all of these things, I mean, it feels like there's a real opportunity there. The only trick that we haven't figured an answer to in this is how much does LeBron want to be part of ownership and how much is the NBA willing to bend to make sure that happens. I'm sure we'll get more updates on that, especially as we get closer and closer to the All-Star game. Eyes are only going to continue to increase. And meanwhile, coming up, we've got a massive college football slate ahead of us. The playoffs are about to begin, and this man is going to be playing for the number one team in the country. We'll get his thoughts on Indiana. Coach Trey Porter says 5'9" D'Angelo Pons is one of the best corners I've watched all year. Somewhere there's a DB coach sick right now because his coordinator wouldn't let him pull the trigger on him, forced the safe 6'2" corner who has no hips, but he got to get him right. All right, so look, talking about size feels crazy when we're talking about somebody with his accomplishments. He joins us now, all Big Ten defensive back, second team All-American D'Angelo Pons. Indiana having a magnificent season. Let's talk about that. Like a lot of comments about the size question. For you, how do you sort of work that into your game?
It's something I've been hearing my whole life. I feel like it plays as an advantage to me. I'm much quicker, much faster than everybody else. I feel like my technique overrides my size anyway. So it doesn't really affect my game at all.
And we just have to talk about these past 2 years. I mean, truly Cinderella storybook, so much success these past 2 years at Indiana. I go back to Curt Cignetti's introductory press conference when he said, Google me, I win. And I think my reaction was like, okay, we'll see about that. Now it's undeniable. You're Big Ten champions. You're the #1 overall seed in the college football playoff. You've lost 2 games in the last 2 years, and that was to Ohio State and Notre Dame. The success is undeniable. It's very apparent to all of us now that Curt Cignetti was right. He wins. When was it apparent to you that Curt Cignetti was a winner and was going to bring this kind of success to Indiana?
It was apparent to me very early. Coming out of high school, I went to James Madison. Coach Cignetti recruited me. He told me that same thing he said in the interview. He wins. He didn't say the Google me part though, but he said that he wins. Man, he knew that I wanted to be a part of a winning program, and it came to be true. He's a winner, and that's the reason I stuck with him.
Have you felt a difference, because we all think of Indiana football some kind of way, right? We're new to learning about Indiana football being this. Have you felt a palpable difference in the way people sort of treat the program?
Definitely a big difference. I would say my first game at Indiana, the stands weren't filled. People were leaving at halftime, stuff like that. Now I look in the stands and it's sold out every game. Nobody's leaving. All the support is going up throughout the community. I would say it's a whole different thing now. So yeah, definitely the support has grown since I've been here.
You started with Coach Cignetti at JMU, obviously followed him to Indiana. You've had a decent amount of time around Coach Cignetti. What is one of your favorite Coach Cignetti stories?
I would say my freshman year, just me being so young. He would just always get on me about just getting to places on time and stuff like that. I don't have a specific story, but I just remember him getting on me about getting to places on time, and that always stuck with me. So I carried it throughout my college career, and I feel like that made me a better person. So yeah.
What makes him a special coach?
I would say he's more of an offensive guy, but he gets on the defensive guys about fundamentals and stuff like that, stuff that we need to hear. But I think that the thing that makes him different is that he's a film junkie. Like, he knows every little thing, the ins and outs of every little thing. I would say when he speaks, it speaks volume. So he don't speak a lot, but when he speaks, a lot of people know that it's important, and it helps throughout the facility. So yeah.
Fitz mentioned off the top that you were named All Big Ten for the 2nd consecutive year. Congratulations, by the way. I know
Thank
the
you.
ultimate goal has yet to be realized. I know that the national championship is the focus, is the goal, is the pie in the sky thing that everybody is striving for. But I'll give you an opportunity to brag on yourself for a second. What does that mean for you?
It means a lot. Just like you said, me being 5'9", a lot of people overlook me. It just means a lot just to get the notoriety I feel like I deserve. And I feel like it means a lot just to prove that people my size can do it. Just to be that motivation to the guys back at home.
So how much different today? Because last year going into the playoffs, everyone was like, it's Indiana, right? How much different do you feel today going in? You've done this before. You've been in a playoff. Like, how different is the entire vibe around the organization, the program going into this year's playoff?
I feel like it's very different. I feel like last year we kind of shocked a lot of people, maybe even shocked ourselves. I feel like it's expected this year. We expect to win. We expect to win those big games. So I feel like it's different from the way we approach it and our mindset. So I feel like it's very different, honestly.
So, you now have the wonderful luxury of getting to sit at home in the first round of the playoffs. Last year, you're in snowy South Bend. This year, you can sit back, chill as the #1 overall seed. So when you sit down to watch that Alabama-Oklahoma matchup, because you'll get the winner of that game in the second round of the playoffs, how do you watch it?
For me, I'm a cornerback, so I'm looking at the receivers, their route concepts and stuff like that. How the quarterback reads the defenses. I'm looking at all the little things that regular fans aren't looking at, but that's the things I'm going to be watching for, just to gain any advantage I can.
As a corner, you get the opportunity to go up against Fernando Mendoza all the time. Obviously, your teammate just won the Heisman. What makes him special?
I would say his ability to read defenses and break them down as the play goes on. A lot of quarterbacks you see can't read the defenses like he does. I feel like he's very smart, and I feel like he got the arm talent, as you can see. So yeah.
Was there a moment you saw this year where you were like, yeah, that's it, guy's gonna win the Heisman?
Yeah, I would say it was like one practice in the middle of the season. I want to say it was like Oregon week. We had like got out of practice and like I got treatment. It's like an hour later and he's still on the field like throwing and stuff like that. I see him still throwing. He's out there by himself. I was like, yeah, that's gonna be the guy. So yeah.
There's been a lot made of him. Like, let's be honest. Everybody's learning about Fernando for the first time, right? So a lot of people thought he kind of came off, as a very innocent person. It's got that sort of personality quirk. For you as a leader, when you see him, he just comes across different than a lot of quarterbacks. How has his leadership style sort of impacted that locker room?
Yeah, he's like you said, he's a different guy. He gets along with everybody in the locker room. Everybody respects him. I feel like it is different from different quarterbacks. Like last year, we had Curtis Work, who was a completely different quarterback from Fernando. I would say Curtis, you really didn't talk to Curtis like that, but around the locker room, Fernando talked to you. Anything like he's cool with everybody. And he also bought the Heisman Trophy in the locker room and had everybody take pictures with it. So that's how you know like what type of guy he is from there.
That is so awesome. And I think everyone kind of fell in love with Fernando Mendoza in his post-game press conference after the Big Ten championship game. Fitz mentioned that you're going up against Fernando and Mendoza in practice. Well, in that game, you're going up against two of the best receivers in college football. You've got Jeremiah Smith and you've got Carnell Tate on that team. Big Ten's chock full of great wide receivers. Who's the toughest receiver that you have covered this season?
Yeah, I would say Jeremiah Smith. That was my high school teammate. I've seen him do what he did in high school. But it's no question Jeremiah Smith to me. I would say like that size and that speed. You don't see that nowhere else. I feel like that he's the best player. So yeah.
Star-studded high school.
About yeah, I mean, my God, what were those high school practices like? Come on.
It was very competitive. I played inside, but when I used to guard him in one-on-ones, it was very competitive. Same as like the game. So yeah.
What did you guys learn about yourself in the Big Ten championship game?
We learned that we can face adversity. We know how to react to adversity. I feel like we learned that no moment's too big for us as well. Because a lot of people said we couldn't get over that hump, like winning big games, and I feel like we showed that we can do that. So yeah.
I think everyone across America is learning about Indiana football, that you can't ignore Indiana football anymore. And if you are, like, that's on you. That is not an Indiana football problem. What is something about your team, the camaraderie, the locker room, the way that you all operate that maybe the greater college football society doesn't know?
I would say we're a very close-knit group. Everybody sticks together no matter what. Like, everybody has each other's back. I would say like that's something you don't get in a lot of college football locker rooms. A lot of support from your teammates and stuff like that. I feel like everybody's very supportive of everybody, and that's what makes us different. I would say.
So we played earlier some of the audio from Missouri coach Eli Drinkwitz talking about college football being broken, and I always love talking to players about this because plenty of coaches turn around and say, between the money and the distractions and agents and financial literacy and all these things. As a player, what would you say when somebody turns around and says the game is broken?
I would say that could be the case, but it also is positive things to it, to this new era. I would say you can meet a lot of new people. A lot of people go like with the transfer portal. It also are like more benefits with that. Like kids can help their families out quicker, stuff like that. So I would say it's more benefits than bad things. So honestly.
Do you find a lot of distractions? Like for you, for all of the success that you're having, do you feel like you're getting pulled in a million different directions outside of just focusing on football?
Yeah, but I know how to handle it. I would say I got the right people around me, and when you have the right people supporting you, it's easy to keep your head focused on the main thing, and that's football. So yeah.
How different does that look at Indiana at the Big Ten level, one of the biggest, if not the biggest and most competitive conferences in college football, versus your early days at JMU?
I would say it's not that big of a difference to me. It's just a bigger crowd, bigger audience, I would say. But like from a competitive standpoint, it's skilled players. I feel like in the Sun Belt, I feel like but you won't see players like Jeremiah Smith. That's I would say that's a difference. But other than that, like they got good skilled players there as well. But I would say the main difference is the trenches. But I play on that like I'm a skilled player, so like I would see good receivers in the Sun Belt and good receivers in the Big Ten as well. So yeah.
I mean, your current team isn't the only team in the college football playoff. Your former team, JMU, is also in the playoffs as well. Do you still have friends on that team? If so, like, what are they feeling like? What are the vibes at JMU headed to the CFP?
Yeah, I still got friends that are at JMU. Those are guys I came in with, so I definitely still talk to them. They play Oregon. They asked me about Oregon, how Oregon was and stuff like that. But yeah, I still support them. I'll be watching that game as well. And I just wish them the best. So yeah.
You've worked your whole life to get to this moment. So far for you in your career, what's been like the one moment that you stood on the field and looked around and said, yeah, I made it. Like all of it was worth it for this moment?
I would say after that Big Ten championship, just seeing the confetti fly down, uh, us being doubted throughout the whole week, throughout the whole year. Honestly, nobody said that would be possible. Nobody thought we were going to win it, and just to prove those doubters wrong and to see us hold up the trophy, I feel like that's when I had that moment right there.
You may have another one of those moments upcoming because you are playing in the granddaddy of them all in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl on New Year's Day. I get chills thinking about it. Like that is the pinnacle of college football. What have you heard about playing at the Rose Bowl? What are you excited to experience at the Rose Bowl?
I haven't really heard much. I know that they delivered us roses the other day. But I
Very
heard
cool.
it was a legendary place to play in. I watched Alabama, Michigan play in that game. That was the last Rose Bowl I watched, but I don't know too much about it. So yeah.
What's the
How have
best
you guys
swag that
stayed
you've
sharp?
gotten?
No.
I can repeat that.
Sorry, what you mentioned that you got roses from the Rose Bowl. What's the best swag that you've gotten either from an NIL deal or from a bowl
Oh.
game?
They haven't delivered the gear yet, but I'm pretty sure we'll be getting that coming up soon.
Ooh,
That's
excited to see
amazing.
it.
D'Angelo, this has just been for all of us that cover the sport. Watching this team has just been incredible. It's what I love about college football. Can't wait to watch you guys in the playoffs. Really appreciate your time, man. Happy holidays, obviously, but most importantly, can't wait to watch you guys and see how this run ends, man. If you when you're hoisting the national championship trophy, you got to come back, hang out with us. Let us know how that moment compared for you, brother. We appreciate your time, man. Thanks for hanging out.
Got you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it, D'Angelo.
It's just one of the best stories in college sports. All right, coming up, it's a Thursday. We'll get to some of the trap games that are out there you need to be aware of right now. Oh, it's a Thirst Trap Thursday. You know what we do here. We get you the trap games you need to know. Going to get out there. Like, there aren't a lot of great trap games this weekend, but we are going to find some that are out there, mostly so that we can show you Mousetrap. Again, Caroline Fenton, this is what we do. We pick some crazy game out there and then figure out if we can take it. So what do you think? What do you got for me as your Thirst Trap game?
Okay, you ready for this?
Mm.
We just had D'Angelo Pons on, so in the spirit of college football and the college football playoff,
Oh, you're not.
give
No.
me the green wave to take down Lane Kiffinless, Ole Miss, and shock the universe. Our group
Let's
of
see
five
the-
conversations in the CFP are going to be very different after this one. Yep.
Oh, look
Yeah.
at this.
Lane Kiffin's out there with LSU headband on, having a great time, riding the green wave. Him and John Summerall just hanging out in the state of Louisiana, and Pete Golding's going to be left for dead. Look
I
at
love
him.
the money gun. He's got the money gun. He's just throwing the cash out. Like this is yeah, it's got cash. It's one of those cash guns. So the cash is coming out on this. That's amazing. You got Lane back there. That might actually be a current picture of Lane Kiffin. I don't know. Usually we have to like
Hot yoga
Photoshop on
bod.
these things, but I mean, yeah, he's got that yoga bod going for him. This is all remarkable. And then getting the selfie in the moment. This is just that is a fantastic Pete Golding Photoshop opportunity. Well done.
Incredible. Bravo to our producer, Doug, who crushes it every single time. Thank you, Doug. And look, I think that there is a fair question about what this Ole Miss team is going to look like without Lane Kiffin. I know that they're going to be galvanized and they're going to be energized. They're going to be ready to go. They want to prove him wrong. They're pissed off at him the way that he left. I get it. I understand all of those things. How does that help you on 3rd and 7? How does that help you in a tactical moment in that game when it is 4th and 2 from the 50-yard line and you're down 3 in the 4th quarter? Like, how does that help you in those situations? Everyone can be fired up and motivated and ready to go. But at the end of the day, what Ole Miss doesn't have is one of the brightest offensive minds in all of football, period. A football savant on the sidelines. Like, Pete Golding is the defensive coordinator, but his job has gotten much more difficult since the last time that they faced Tulane. This entire coaching staff is jumbled up and different. Everybody's focus is somewhere else. No longer is Pete Golding's focus on the defense. It's on the team in its entirety. No longer is Charlie Weiss Jr.'s job to just call plays. Charlie Weiss Jr. is recruiting at LSU now. Like he's not employed by Ole Miss anymore. So while I think this locker room is going to be focused, I do question the focus level of this coaching staff. That's one thing. The second thing is, I think that the first time these two teams played in the regular season, look, it was a 45-10 Ole Miss absolute splattering in Oxford. Tulane's a much better team than what we saw earlier in the season. I mean, they've got Jake Retzlaff, who's a mobile quarterback. Ole Miss has struggled against the run and against mobile quarterbacks for a majority of this season. Ole Miss basically had that game won in the first quarter when Tulane's defense just could not get off the field. They had an 8-play, 75-yard drive that took off 3 minutes of clock, and then a 15-play, 70-yard drive that took off 7 minutes of clock in the first quarter. And at that point, when Ole Miss went up 10-0, it was really kind of over. The game got away from Tulane in the first quarter. When they played earlier this season. I don't think that's going to be the case this time around. This Tulane defense is much better than they were the first go around. I think this Tulane run game is much better than we got to see the first go around because you blinked and it was 10-0. They couldn't run themselves out of that game. So I think Tulane has what it takes to take down Ole Miss. A distracted Ole Miss coaching staff.
It is your coaching staff point is an important one. I scream this all the time, but being a coordinator is so different than being a head coach. So the concept that, I'm just going to slide into the sideline. Also, you just lost the most coveted head coach in the cycle. There has to be value to that. This is what I always used to say to Alabama fans when Nick Saban left, when they thought, we'll just replace Nick Saban with anybody. It'll be fine. We're Alabama football. That devalues the actual value of great coaches. Lane Kiffin was valued the way he was valued by everybody because of what he brings to the sideline during games, right? Like this is just part of what you have to accept is going to be less than at some level. I fear that they just don't have the hogs to be able to compete with size of Ole Miss, size and speed of Ole Miss. I do fear that. But I do think distraction is real. And everybody can sit here and say, oh, no, they're going to be galvanized. It's going to be fine. Sure, that's all true to a certain extent. But I don't know. It's just all of these are extra weights that have been on, whether it's where am I going to play next year, the transfer portal stuff that we have talked so much about. We can't sit here and scream about the calendar being broken and then imply that the calendar being broken also doesn't, in some ways, impact the focus of everybody involved in this process. So you've got players that are trying to figure out where they're going to play. You've got coaches that are trying to figure out how to build a program they're about to go to. You've got a new head coach trying to figure out how to be a new head coach with the pressure of, I just got this job full time, not interim, right? So all of these different things stack up to lead to distraction. If Ole Miss was playing what I thought was a very deserving football team, if Ole Miss was playing one of the better teams that could have made the playoffs, if they were playing a Vanderbilt or a Texas, any of these schools that we talked about that were on the fringe, I think they would lose this weekend. I just am concerned Tulane doesn't have the beef necessary to compete. I don't know why I keep saying hogs and beef that way, but we're going to go with it. All right, I'll give you my trap
I like
game.
it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. My trap game, I'll go to the NFL for you. And this one feels weird when I say it. Won't be as weird as the picture for it, I'm sure. How about this? 10.5-point favorites. That would be the Buffalo Bills at the Cleveland Browns. Trap game. All right, look at that. Oh, he's got the map. I'm feeling
I like
this.
that.
I
like that.
Person. I can't do the purse lips.
That's
Garrett,
new dad energy right there.
Yeah,
Does he have money in his Matador outfit, costume? Whatever the word is?
He's got cash.
Apologies.
That's cash. That's cash because
Yeah.
he can. Also, I like Record Day and Sack King in the back here because let's face it, if this is going to happen, it's happening with Myles Garrett being the biggest part of it. So think about when we define trap games. A trap game is typically a game in between other games of more significance, right? So all you have to do is look at the schedule. Just a few days ago, the Bills were taking on the Patriots in New England, right? And next week, the Bills take on the Eagles, a very good football team. In the middle, they get the Browns. And this is a Bills team that is at its worst when it is forced to be one-dimensional. I've said on the show a couple of times, I have some trust issues with James Cook, right? So I have trust issues with James Cook holding on to the football. I have trust issues with the way James Cook has run a couple of times lately. So I suddenly am looking at what I think is their second most important player on offense and saying, I don't know. Can this Cleveland defense take that away? I'm old enough to remember this earlier this year when the Cleveland defense made everything look a little bit problematic for a lot of teams. If they can do that, and then that man can get after Josh Allen, set the sack record, pull off the upset, maybe we get a little bit of Shador magic in this. Let's just bring all the spices together in the cabinet and give me the Browns getting just enough spicy to take down the Bills. What say you, Caroline?
No.
Oh.
No, it would be a very,
very
fun story. But the Browns, I've said it about the Titans. I've said it about your beloved Raiders, Fitz, and I apologize for that. The Browns, I think, are just a skosh above those teams in that I don't think that they are good enough to take advantage of bad teams or teams playing bad football. I think right now, the Bills, after beating the Patriots, they're feeling themselves winning the division is within grasp. You know, the path to the Super Bowl going through Buffalo is a realistic thing. I don't think they're going to let themselves take their foot off the gas just because it's the crummy, crappy Browns. Like, I've looked at this on the Bills schedule as like, this is such a perfect opportunity when so many other contenders in the AFC are going to be just going to war and battling and some of these divisional matchups. The Bills can get the Browns. So I do believe that it has all of the makings of a trap game. I just can't buy into it. Not Josh Allen playing the way that he's playing.
Okay. That is for sure. The Josh Allen element of it is the scary element of it. And I will be fair here. If you look back at the way that the Browns defense has played, since we saw them against the Ravens have a pretty good game in a game that they lost. It was a close one. And that was a period where they were losing a bunch of games. It felt like close. Over the last, the Bears just dismantled them 31-3. That one is probably a better indication of where this team stacks up against actually good teams. The 49ers took them down 26-8. So you're right. The last couple of times they've faced even remotely competent competition, it hasn't worked out. I do wonder, though, just with everything stacked up against Cleveland and how bad it's been. Also, Myles Garrett having the sack record is going to be an opportunity at it. Is going to be a really interesting point into this game. As much as I want a trap game here, I wonder if just knowing that you could be the person that gives up history to Myles Garrett actually gives up a little bit more focus to everybody in this process. I don't know. Maybe I'm talking myself out of it.
I think an interesting matchup, though, would be Shador versus this Bills defense. Because, yes, Myles Garrett versus Josh Allen, you've got superstar on superstar, defensive player of the year going up against MVP candidate Josh Allen. But this Bills defense is stinky. It's part of the reason why I really don't trust the Bills to win 4 games on the path to a Super Bowl. Good opportunity for Shador because he looks good against bad defenses and looks bad against good defenses. What does he look like against this Bills team? I think that might be the interesting matchup to watch here, too.
Well, and a good opportunity for Quinshon Judkins, who earlier in the season, I think we were all starting to buy in that could be a real, he could be a star. And then you look at the last couple of weeks, and that has not been the case for Judkins. So we'll see. We'll see how we can do on the trap games coming in. We have both picked wild long shots that could be difficult. In the meantime, we'll get Ben Fawkes' thoughts, not just on long shots, but on actual odds you need to know on those two teams coming up next. The Hobby Awards, presented by Mantle and Yahoo Sports. It goes down tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern on the Yahoo Sports Network and Yahoo Sports YouTube. A night honoring the best and brightest across the world of collecting, with each winner taking home an exclusive Ghostwrite trophy to commemorate the inaugural affair. Those look absolutely incredible. Categories include Best Sports Card Product, Best Hobby Shop, Best Auction House, and Influencer of the Year. Caroline, you got a favorite like I'm sitting here with Funkos around me and wrestling figures. You got a favorite collectible?
You got platinum records behind you too. I don't have any of those, but you do seem to collect those. I have a couple of old vintage game programs. I have a Tennessee LSU program from 1963, I think, behind me. I have an old Cardinal scorecard from when my dad was a kid framed behind me. So I love to collect fun little vintage mementos from some of my favorite teams.
That's absolutely. I've got so many toys for a grown man with no children that it's but it's just what I do. All right, the Hobby Awards presented by Mantle Yahoo Sports goes down tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern on the Yahoo Sports Network and of course on Yahoo Sports YouTube. All right, we're going to bring in Ben Fawkes now. We got to get some thoughts on everything happening. Senior betting analyst to discuss a big weekend of football. Let's start with college football playoffs, Ben. It is finally time. Ohio State the favorite at this point. So What do we make of the odds and where they sit right now?
Yeah, I was going to say, I have plenty of sports cards too. We can go over for collectibles a different time.
Let's go.
Not in my background currently. But yeah, as you would kind of expect, Ohio State and Indiana 1-2. A little surprising perhaps to some people, obviously, that Indiana, the number 1 overall seed, and beat Ohio State, yet Ohio State has those better odds. Ohio State really just that highly power rated team by odds makers, and that was a really close game between two teams. I think the interesting one that stands out is kind of Oregon and Texas Tech. With Texas Tech at plus 900, we see at BetMGM, they have the bye, right, the number 4 seed, whereas Oregon has better odds at plus 800, despite the fact that they do play a first round game. Now they are a 20.5 point favorite against JMU, so obviously they're expected to come through that game. But actually, sportsbooks have look-ahead lines, and it's interesting because at some sportsbooks, Oregon is a slight favorite, about a 1.5 point favorite over Texas Tech in the next round if Oregon advance. And in other sportsbooks, it's the opposite, and Texas Tech is a 1 or 1.5 point favorite. So these are very close teams matched up. Part of the reason Oregon also has better odds is just there's more liability that is built up in the futures market. One odds maker I spoke to said Oregon has been one of the teams that's taken a lot of action since the college football bracket was released. And so it's always important to remember with those futures odds, it's not actually kind of the true odds, right, for that team to advance or to win it all, excuse me. There's a lot of things that go into that, including the public perception and how much the public's going to bet on them. And then again, the liability that's already added up over the course of the season and then in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I don't want to count out JMU, but I am so here for that Texas Tech Oregon matchup. Oh, it's going to be a good one. If JMU does in fact lose, don't want to assume. But one game that I'm looking at in the first round is Alabama Oklahoma. Now, Alabama opened as 2.5 point favorites. That line has since shifted to in favor of Oklahoma by 1.5 points. What do you make of that line movement?
Yeah, there's been a big shift, right, from when we saw in the college football playoff. It's always interesting when we get another meeting of teams, right, whether it's teams that met during the regular season or one of the conference title games. And so we saw this game several weeks ago, and Alabama at home was a 6.5 point favorite. Now they're on the road and they're a 1.5 point underdog, right? So if we roughly say that home field advantage is worth 1.5 points, basically, that's saying Bama was 5 points better than Oklahoma in that first game, and now they're essentially even, right, based off of where the market is. So that is a big movement. I think probably upwards a bit for Oklahoma, and I think a lot downwards for Alabama, just because even though they weren't hurt in the college football playoff ranking, right, they still made it, even though they had that third loss in the SEC championship game. They didn't look great, certainly against Georgia, and so I think probably they were downgraded a little bit. Oklahoma as well kind of has had a longer rest, right? And Alabama just hasn't been trending necessarily in the right direction. You look at their games, really that Tennessee game, I think they won 37-20 in November is their last kind of statement win where they really have looked good. This game against Oklahoma, they did put up a lot of yards of offense, had some turnovers, and Oklahoma really didn't do a whole lot. I think 212 total yards of offense. John Mateer only 138 yards passing. So they struggled against that defense. Alabama struggled against the Georgia defense. And then the issue as well is that the Oklahoma defense is also very good. So you would expect kind of both offenses to struggle here. One of my writers for Yahoo Sports Betting Hub liked the under in this game, which has also come down. I think it's at 39.5. That's probably the way I would be leaning. The game itself really seems like kind of a toss-up. It's hard to know exactly what you're going to get. I think the best version of Alabama beats the best version of Oklahoma, but who knows if that's what we're going to get in this game.
All right, so we got two games that even the college football schedule gods think are going to be blowouts because they put them up against the NFL games on Saturday, right? JMU at Oregon, 20.5 point spread. Tulane at Ole Miss, 17.5 points. So what's the right approach for somebody that's out there trying to figure out how to bet these games?
Just go to bet the NFL games is what I'd say. No. Look, I think ultimately you have to, speaking to odds makers, right, as you would expect, these are the games that everyone is thinking is the free bingo square, either with the money line for Oregon or Ole Miss, or potentially the points. It's just you want to be a little careful, especially laying the points with the big favorites, because There are a couple factors, right? One is that for these group of 5 teams, this is their Super Bowl. And so even if they're losing by 21, 24, 28 points, they're going to point to that final score as, hey, we could compete, or hey, we only lost by X amount of points. The ending of the game is going to matter a little more to them. Whereas for these teams, it's win and survive, it's win and advance in the college football playoff. You're not trying to get in. Whereas, right, we saw Notre Dame in the regular season, not only winning those games, but trying to win by large margins to impress the committee. There is no committee. You just win and you get to the next round. So if Oregon's up 20 points and there's 5 minutes left, why would Dante Moore go back in the game, right? They don't have any incentive to keep scoring. The game's basically over. They're going to win. That's what they care about. As bettors, if we're betting on the spread, we care whether or not they cover. So I'd be a little concerned about that end of the game and whether their backup's going in. I think that means more to the underdogs. And then it's just always important to remember, too, if you're looking, hey, I'll just bet on the first half, then I don't have to worry about the rest of the game. Certainly possible, and certainly possible if they get out to a big lead. There's also a possibility they sleepwalk a little bit through the first half and it's closer. And remember, you pay a little more of a tax on that first half line as well. So the game spread, for example, Oregon JMU, that's Oregon minus 20.5. That first half isn't minus 10, minus 10.5. It's minus 11.5 for Oregon. So there's a little bump there as well. They have to cover a little more. This is a game I would probably just watch a couple of drives, see if you think JMU can compete, and then kind of go off of that. But ultimately, I think it's probably going to be a game that the spread's going to come down to the wire. It's not one I would really want to be a part of to see whether they win by 20, 21, 24. I'll be rooting for JMU too. I don't think it's going to be that close, though.
Yeah, all great points and great strategy by you, Ben. That is why they pay you the big bucks, our expert. But we do have a massive game tonight on Thursday Night Football for the NFC West, possibly for the number 1 overall seed in the NFC. We've got the Rams and the Seahawks. Seahawks now sitting at 1.5-point favorites, but the Rams actually opened as road favorites initially. So does this tell us that the public thinks that Sam Darnold and company are going to be able to get it done?
Yeah, another interesting game. This actually, the public has been on slightly on the Rams, and some more respected money has been on both sides, but I think more on the Seahawks pushing that line this way. I think a little of that also reaction to Devontae Adams, I believe, doubtful if he's going to play. Obviously, with that hamstring injury, you would think three days rest isn't really enough, and obviously they don't want that to be re-injured before the playoffs. But just such a big game. We've seen the total as well come down from 45.5. I think it got as low to 41.5 up to 42.5 now. Supposed to be bad weather in Seattle with rain, a lot of wind. And we've seen the Rams, we played this game before, right, in LA. They won that game, but the offense struggled. They really won that game because the defense created 4 turnovers that Sam Darnold threw, 4 interceptions. And Darnold really has kind of been on a downward trajectory the last few weeks, where that offense has been getting worse. Through weeks 1 through 9, I think they were ranked 5th by DVOA. They're ranked about 18th in the last 5 weeks. And Darnold hasn't had a QBR over 44 in a game since then. So he hasn't played very well the last few weeks. The defense has gotten even better for Seattle. And just a massive game. Both these teams are the best against the spread at 10-4. 2 best Super Bowl odds, 2 most highly power rated teams by odds makers, and the potential number 1 seed at stake too. I still lean the Seahawks, probably with that Devontae Adams injury, and just the Seahawks knowing that they won't most likely get the number 1 seed since they already lost that previous game if they lose this. But one other note to watch out too is if the Seahawks win this game, the San Francisco 49ers actually control their destiny for the number 1 seed in the NFC if they win out, because they've already beaten the Seahawks and they'd play them again week 18. So they would be able to catch them as well. So just another note in this game that should be a really good one tonight.
Stick there for a second with this number 1 seed stuff, because we've talked a lot on this show about how important I think home field advantage would be for these West Coast teams to not have to go through Green Bay or Chicago, for example, any of those places. From what you can tell, how much does Vegas value home field advantage for teams like Seattle and the Rams?
I think a lot, especially for the Rams. I think the Seahawks, you always figure that home field advantage is big. And Sam Darnold, I think there's still that, right? Maybe not full trust built in and belief. But the Rams, we've seen this. Obviously, Matthew Stafford played indoors in Detroit. He has the arm strength for outside, but we saw this against the Eagles last year. They were a couple plays away from beating the Eagles in the snow, and Saquon Barkley ran through them, right? And Jalen Carter finally makes that play. At the end, they lose the game. Who knows how it goes if it's in LA? But just having the game at home, sleeping in your own bed, the other team has to come there. The comforts of home, as well as the lack of weather, I think is the really big thing for a Rams offense predicated on speed, and a defense that's really good with that pass rush and secondary as well. So really important, I think, especially for the Rams, who are the number one power rated team by odds makers as well. They kind of have it all. One of those things would be, hey, if we go outside and there's the elements, it kind of levels the playing field a little bit, and I think is worse for obviously those better teams, helps to bring up the competition, which could certainly take out the Rams in the playoffs if they're not at home.
Yeah, crazy how much home field advantage can make an impact on this postseason. But before we get you out of here, Ben, the Ravens 3-point favorites over the Patriots. Now, I understand this game is in Baltimore. I understand that the offense is starting to come together in Baltimore, but 3-point favorites against the Patriots, who look like they could be the number one overall seed in the AFC? Explain this to me.
Yeah, I had to have a little therapy session with your producer Hutton, I think, as to why the Ravens were favored by 3 points. He couldn't believe it. It's a pretty simple answer, which is basically just the Ravens are still a higher power rated team by odds makers than the Patriots, despite that Patriots 10-game win streak. Odds makers just haven't been as impressed, and the Ravens are at home. And so the combination of that, they looked a little better last week against the Bengals. And one odds maker said, despite New England's record, there's still a couple of teams in the AFC that are with higher power ratings. I think the Bills, the Broncos, some others. So the Patriots still a very good team, but a big product of that schedule, even as well as Drake May has played. We saw that a little bit against the Bills, where they built that lead, couldn't hold it against one of the best teams in the AFC. This is just kind of a power rating thing. And the Ravens getting healthier, looking a little better, though still not how we probably thought they would be earlier in the season. But that's mostly it. Still a little surprising, though, when you see New England with that record as an underdog.
You guys can follow him on social media at bfox22. And, of course, read him, yahoosports.com/betting. Ben Fawkes, enjoy all of the games this weekend, and thank you for the therapy session for Hutton. We try and do it all the time, but I'm glad that you're helping out, too. We appreciate your time, my friend.
Always. Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Great
Ben.
stuff from Ben, as always. Coming up, two of the biggest battles in the AFC. We'll figure out who you should be paying attention to. We'll tell you about it next. The 10-4 Jags versus the 12-2 Broncos is a marquee game in the NFL playoff race, but the NFL isn't giving it marquee exposure. It'll be a regional broadcast that most Fox affiliates won't show. That's the modern NFL for you. It doesn't matter. We're also going to be watching it on Sunday Ticket or Red Zone, but we do know that there are some massive matchups. This is huge, obviously, for the Broncos, who are trying to secure home field advantage throughout the course of the playoffs, which would be massive for them. And at the same time, you have a Jags team that's 10-4. For all of the conversation about how they're broken, they're 10-4. So who has more of a prove-it matchup here to you? Is it Bo Nix or Trevor Lawrence?
I think it's Bo Nix, but both of these quarterbacks have a whole lot to prove. Narrative busters for both of these guys. But for Bo Nix, he has proven to me over the last couple of weeks that he can win a Super Bowl in Denver. Is Bo Nix going to be the kind of quarterback like Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen that's, wins the game for his team? No, I don't think so. But with that defense and the pieces around Bo Nix, with a head coach in Sean Payton that's been there before, I think this iteration of Bo Nix can win a Super Bowl. He's proven that to me. I don't think that he's done enough to prove that to the general sports society or general football fans out there. I think Bo Nix has this narrative kind of hanging around him, whether you think it's right, wrong, or indifferent, that he is going to blow a game, that he's going to keep it too close, he's going to throw the death pick. And look, I do still think that Bo Nix is capable of doing that, but I think he needs to prove it in a big game, in a big prove-it moment. To go 13-2 at this point in the season is so impressive. You don't do that without quality quarterback play. So I think it's Bo Nix.
It's funny because as you eloquently point you support your point, I feel like a philosophy professor because I'm listening to it and I'm like, God, this is all very true. I think it depends on how we define prove it. And how I'm that guy that I just want to punch in the face. But I think prove it defines differently this year because prove it to make you a Super Bowl contender. You're right, Bo Nix, because he seems to be the one little thing that we all doubt on this. I think there's a lot of people that are still trying to figure out if Trevor Lawrence is even really an elite quarterback. Is Trevor Lawrence really
he's not
that
an elite
guy? And right. And so to that point, when you see Trevor Lawrence against this defense, that to me screams prove it. When you see Trevor Lawrence and you understand that, hey, you're going to be taking on the type of defenses they will have to get through. I think the biggest concern that I have when we sit here and say, why are the Jags not getting more love in the Super Bowl conversation? Well, because I don't trust that. I can't believe I'm saying this. I don't trust Trevor Lawrence against the Broncos defense. I don't trust Trevor Lawrence against the Texans defense. I don't trust Trevor Lawrence against the Patriots defense. Like, you start stacking up the teams that actually get a little benefit of the doubt in the AFC. And the question I have is, can I trust the quarterback to take advantage of that? I don't see that in Trevor Lawrence. And it'll never make sense to me. As I've said to you before, Caroline, I was standing on the sidelines covering Trevor Lawrence in college football when people were saying he should sue the league to be allowed in after his freshman year at Clemson because he was going to be the next John Elway. Like, that's where we went. Like, that was the belief from smart football minds on Trevor Lawrence. And instead, he just looks like an okay, really up and down starting quarterback that's getting paid a lot of money. So if Bo Nix flounders in this game and everything goes to hell in a handbasket, then we're going to have a conversation about how do the Broncos work around that to figure out how to win the Super Bowl. If Trevor Lawrence goes out in this game and sucks, I think we're going to have a real conversation of, do the Jags actually have the quarterback that they need to have to become a Super Bowl champion? That's just a staggering. So for me, prove it is just there's more on the line for the negative for Trevor Lawrence.
I think, though, you have to look at their careers. Trevor Lawrence is in year 5. Bo Nix is in year 2. At some point, you just are what you are. At some point, we have to look at your body of work and say, we can't keep holding our breath waiting for you to show us that you're something different, because you just are who you are. Now, I do have to add context to that Trevor Lawrence has had a pretty rocky start to his NFL career that's completely out of his control. I mean, walking into the Urban Meyer-led Jags, any quarterback in America, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, would fail under Urban Meyer. How many different head coaches and offensive coordinators has Trevor Lawrence had in his 5 years in Jacksonville? Are we at 3, 4?
Yeah.
Like, I can buy into the idea that Trevor Lawrence, but we haven't seen the best of Trevor Lawrence in his NFL career yet, and maybe consistency under Liam Cohen can do that. I can buy into that. But at some point, you just are who you are. And Trevor Lawrence is a fickle quarterback. I'm still trying to figure out who Bo Nix is as an NFL quarterback. I think that's what he has left to prove. That Trevor Lawrence, we can maybe say, all right, we just know what we're going to expect from you, and that's inconsistency. You're consistently inconsistent. Bo Nix, I think there's still a level to be unlocked there, and I just want to continue to see it week over week. That's what I want Bo Nix to prove to me and to everyone out there, that he's not going to be the captain of a ship, but can he be a good enough passenger to get the Broncos to a Super Bowl with that level of defense? I want to see that.
Let's look at another AFC matchup that is massive. We just talked to Ben Fawkes a little bit about it. We've got New England versus Baltimore. So suddenly, if the Ravens lose this game, their postseason chances take a massive hit. And it feels weird to be sitting here saying, well, the Baltimore's got to find a way to win the game versus an 11-3 Patriots team. But by God, they got to find a way to win this game. If they miss the postseason, are changes coming in your mind for Baltimore?
I don't think so. What's the offseason plan for Baltimore if they miss out on the postseason? Like, get healthy. That's been a big reason why the Ravens are where they are, is they were banged up defensively. Lamar Jackson wasn't right. I don't think that they make a coaching change this offseason. I think that John Harbaugh has built up too much positive equity to be let go after one bad season. But I do think that this offseason would be a really pivotal point for him, that he would be going into next season probably on a much toastier seat than anybody would have anticipated at the beginning of this season. I don't think there's massive changes to be made. What are you going to do? Move on from Lamar Jackson? Fire John Harbaugh? Make coordinator changes? I don't think that we're at that point in Baltimore. I think that you can just chalk it up to injuries suck, and that derailed our year.
Yeah, and this is where I know Ravens fans don't want to hear this. Go back to 2018. 10-6, 14-2, 11-5, 8-9, 10-7, 13-4, 12-5. Those are the records of the Baltimore Ravens year by year. When's the last time we saw a head coach fired after that sort of success year in and year out? I mean, it is so wildly rare. Like, there's these old Marty Schottenheimer back with the Chiefs that kept getting to the AFC Championship game and lost, and they eventually fired him. You have to look back so far to find success at that level with that many wins year in and year out, resulting in an immediate firing. The Ravens could lose their last 3 games, finish 7-10. Harbaugh's not going anywhere. Lamar's not going anywhere. They're going to look internally. They're going to look in the mirror, and they're going to figure it out. And by the way, I also think that's the right move. I remember the first time I ever interviewed Adam Schefter when I was just trying to break into sports media, and I was a little podcast nobody was listening to over a decade ago, right? And I asked Schefter, I said, what's the difference between great teams and terrible teams in the NFL? And without hesitation, he said continuity. You have to find a way to remain consistent. You have to find continuity. Great organizations don't make rash changes. Great organizations don't turn around and look at it and say, well, things didn't go well this year, so we're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, that's just not the way great organizations do things. The Ravens have been stably run for a very long time, and I realize that hasn't resulted in Super Bowls, but it has resulted in proximity to Super Bowls. They have been in that conversation year in and year out. They can finish 7-10, and then Harbaugh's not going anywhere. Maybe next year people are a little less patient, but I can't imagine that there's anything that changes in Baltimore.
Yeah, it doesn't need to. If you got a good thing going, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And you can make the argument, well, this year proved that they were broken. I don't think this year proved that anything was broken with the Baltimore Ravens. I think this year is just sometimes when you're on a path to a Super Bowl, sometimes you just have bad years. I think the Kansas City Chiefs are experiencing that as well. But do you think that, all these teams that we're talking about, the AFC, whether it's, the Baltimore-New England matchup that we have upcoming, whether it's Denver, whether it's Jacksonville, all of those things considered, with how healthy of an ecosystem we think exists in Baltimore, does Baltimore have the highest ceiling of those 4 teams?
So I think if you were playing the video game version, yes. But having watched the Ravens this year, they just haven't looked right. So I think I think right now, top to bottom, wildly, the Broncos are a better football team. I don't trust Bo Nix. I trust Lamar Jackson more than I trust Bo Nix in these situations. That's fine. But still, top to bottom, I think the Broncos are a better football team than any of the teams we're talking about right here. I think they're better than the Patriots. I think they're better than the Ravens. I go up and down the list. I think they're better than the Jags. They'll prove that. The Broncos have clearly separated themselves as a team you can buy into for the Super Bowl for me.
I think it's the Broncos. I think the Broncos have the highest ceiling because of their defense and because Bo Nix, if we see what we saw from Bo Nix against Green Bay, 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks, like that level of play from Bo Nix combined with that defense, like I really love what I've seen from the Patriots. I just can't say that their ceiling is higher because I don't know how much I really trust and believe in what's around Drake May. Drake May can't afford to have a clunker of a game. Bo Nix can have a clunker of a game and he still gets bailed out by his defense. So that's the reason I think the only other team that I would put in the conversation of a higher ceiling when we're talking about those 4 teams would be the Patriots, but I think the Broncos ceiling is higher. That doesn't say that they're going to play to their ceiling week in and week out and game in and game out, but I think it is higher.
Well, and that's, I think the Ravens are the hardest team to peg in that entire conversation to figure out where they belong in this conversation. And that's because the Ravens can be one or two things. Like you said earlier, at some point you are who you have been, like about Trevor Lawrence. I'd say that they are who they've been. You know, this is still a Ravens team that just 2 weeks ago lost to the Steelers. So I have trust issues with Baltimore being able to piece that together. It's going to be a wild next 4 or 5 days in football, though, because a lot of these answers will start to become much clearer. And what I know is that we'll be back right here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. We'll be here to get you caught up for the weekend starting tomorrow. Come back hanging with us on Yahoo Sports Daily at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Have a great day.